here and this surface here are the two planes I'm talking about. Imagine us having a building out of this shape, but we want to put a peak on a roof, for example. I have to at some point make a decision on how tall the building's peak will be. And in this case, I put a dot on this center line, and I'm going to connect this point to the vanishing point. And again, I don't need to press hard, but I do want to make sure that this line here is visible in the end. To make matters easier right now, I could extend this line a little further and bring it out from the front of the building, but I'm just going to rely on the corner of this to give me an angle that you'll see the importance of, or the relationship to, in a minute. I now have a peak or a point that I ended wherever I feel was right, and you're going to use your eyes to figure out what should actually be there when you're looking at a particular building. And I'm going to bring that eve out enough that when I get to this spot, I'll take it back to that vanishing point back there. Okay? If this gets confusing, you can soften some of these lines. But keep in mind that the same thing we use to establish the height of this and the slope of this can be used back here, where I have this spot crossing this line. I can now put my pencil and, using that corner, draw a line out and be confident that the angle's right and it's where it should be. I'm now taking away some of the lines that were just used to draw things in with. I've mentioned before that I shouldn't be rubbing the paper with my hands, but it's a reminder that there are tools and implements you can use to keep your oils off the paper. This is purely a sketching exercise, so go ahead, do what you want, but bad habits can form if you let them. So I try to establish or remind you that there's a point in doing things. If you take this corner where this line meets the line going back to the vanishing point and draw it towards the other vanishing point, there's going to be a point where it crosses, so I'm basically drawing this line, and rather than dirtying it up, I'm just going to extend this a little bit further and use this height and this corner to complete the roof and the overhang. So by drawing that line to where that first line is, I've now created how tall or how far out it should go. But I don't have this angle right. So that was meant to help me establish how far down it goes, and I'll take that line off. And now I'll connect it to this corner. This corner goes to the vanishing point, and I now have it going back in the proper angle. It's a slight difference, but if you don't know to correct these things, you'll have a mistake and you're really not confident that you've got it right. In my world here, I could establish any kind of building. I could put one tall door and call it a shed, or a smaller, lower door and call it a house. So I'm still going to work with the middle of this to keep it simple and call this a two-story building with an attic. And if I draw perpendicular lines to the horizon for the front of this door, or for the door in the front of this building, I'm eyeballing it using this dotted line that was the center line before that. And I'll take my vanishing point off to the right and continue this line so that it's flowing back into perspective. Had I continued these lines for the door jambs a little taller or a little further up, I would have ended up with maybe a place where I could put a window for the second floor. And every line that comes off of that window has to go back to the vanishing point on the right-hand side of my paper in this case. If you think of the house you live in now, the windows in each room are probably at the same height. So one of the things I want to remind you about is you can take a window like this here one that I established here, and draw a line straight through to that vanishing point. Where that line runs into this corner is where the next row of windows would start if you had them in the second floor. So you could draw a line here. If you wanted the same height of window, then some of it would be covered by the eaves, but we'd have to do it a little differently. So I'm going to take and lower the side windows. I might use half a window height. And if I take that and bring it to this point, that will hit. So if I draw a line through the middle of that window to the vanishing point, it'll get me to that corner, which will allow me to find out where this next row of windows go. Again, I'll do my lines light because I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet in terms of the spacing between the windows. If I have a window here and I want to think about symmetry, and I'll do a bigger window below that, I might put a skinny window here and a taller one here. All those windows are going to be designed on the same premise, that these lines here that form the top and the bottom of this window will go towards that vanishing point. So this second story window is going to be using lines that go back to that vanishing point. But the first story window might be a lot higher since I've got more room, and it'll again have tops and bottoms that go towards that vanishing point. And you can continue doing that with all the windows if you desire to have more along this plane or this side of the house. So I really quickly wanted to go through 1-point perspective and 2-point perspective to show you that it's not the most difficult thing in the world. If you got some tracing paper and you got a man-made object, take a sheet of tracing paper and put it on top of a room or a house, a building that you want to draw. And again, trace those lines and see which of the two perspectives it falls into. There is a third, I won't confuse you with that now, but with the 2-point perspectives, you're going to cover probably 99% of the reference you have. Just be careful that the camera doesn't distort things and put lines on angles. And be sure when you're taking pictures, you learn to hold your camera square to the horizon so that your walls or your windows or your buildings have lines that are perpendicular to the horizon, and then you'll find that it'll be a lot easier to do your drawings.